It's that time again for our prospect profile and projection series, giving you all you need to know about a 2022 NBA draft prospect, their overview, their strengths, their weaknesses, and how they would fit with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Let's start out strong with Jabari Smith today on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your teams every day.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I'm your host, Rylan Stiles. You can follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Email the show, LOThunderPod@gmail.com. On today's show, brought to you by BetOnline.net. Let's start our 2022 NBA Draft Prospect Profile and Projections with a bang, giving you all you need to know but a possible Thunder prospect ahead of the NBA draft. We do this all throughout the offseason to get you up to speed on what to expect on NBA draft night. Today's prospect is Jabari Smith Jr., one of my favorite prospects in this class. What are his strengths, his weaknesses, his range, his fit with the Thunder, and other general information? But again, today's show is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this year with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline is where the game starts. My favorite time of year, NBA draft season, and we're going to cover it the entire offseason with these player profile and projections, with our chats with Richard Stayman and other draft experts throughout the offseason, mock drafts, big boards, everything you need to know every single day, even in the offseason, right here on Locked On Thunder. So subscribe for free across all platforms so you never miss an episode. Give a thumbs up and a subscription on YouTube as well. On today's show, we're going to talk all about Jabari Smith, folks, and you can dictate how we do this. You can tell me what players you want next on our profile and projection. We're going to get through over 60 players in this series. That's the goal, and I want to hear from you. Which ones are you most looking forward to on our player profile and projections? We've got Jabari Smith today. On Tuesday, we'll talk with Mavs draft Richard Stayman about Chet Holmgren, and then from there, I leave it up to you. What players and prospects do you want to hear about, and what's the priority list for you? You can let me know in the comment section below on YouTube or on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles or at the email address, LOThunderPod@gmail.com. So there's plenty of ways for you to interact with the show. And again, today's profile is Jabari Smith, a 6'10 wing, 210. I don't know the wingspan yet for him. We'll get that at the combine probably. Age 19, school Auburn. He has an incredible shot and is able to get it off even without space. He can defend in the modern playoff era, which is a big deal. You're watching the NBA playoffs right now, and you're seeing how if you can't play on one side of the floor, you're very limited in what you can do. And you're seeing how in the playoffs, the game slows down. You play in the half-court set, and it's easy to dictate matchups to get your best players off the floor if you're the opponent. And so with Jabari Smith, his ability to shoot tough shots and knock down wide-open catch-and-shoot threes with an ability to defend 1 through 5 will keep him on the court in a half-court setting in a playoff era whenever that comes for the Thunder. Whenever they're back in the playoffs, you can play Jabari Smith. I think that he would be an incredible number 2 or 3 piece next to Giddey and SGA for this Thunder rebuild. Bruce Pearl calls Jabari Smith one of the best players he's ever coached, the best player he's ever coached. And for me, the biggest overview is that he's a no-number guy. Whenever you go watch Auburn, whenever you go watch Jabari Smith's high school film, whenever you watch anything involving Jabari Smith, you can immediately point out who is the potential first overall pick, who's the potential top 3 pick, and who's the guy that everybody's salivating over. And there have been players who, despite the projection of being a top 5 pick, have gotten lost on film and haven't stood out. And if you brought their film to a non-basketball diehard observer, they couldn't pick him out of a lineup. With Jabari Smith, no matter who you bring this film to, and if you ask them, who is the potential top pick in this year's draft, everyone will know exactly who it is on the court, and it's Jabari Smith, even without knowing his number, what he looks like, who he is, any of that. And so that's why I think Jabari Smith is the best fit out there for the Thunder. He's number one on my big board, and I honestly can't see changing that. It's a big board this year that has no clear cut number one, that has no decisiveness, that if you have a different number one, I can't argue it. Like last year, everybody had Cade Cunningham. Everybody did. And there was not much debate. The draft started at 2, right? This year, my number 3 could be your number 1, and it's completely reasonable, and NBA GMs will agree with you. And some NBA GMs will have Jabari Smith, and some will have Chet Holmgren, some will have Paulo Banchero. But for me, Jabari Smith is the pick for the Thunder if they land at number 1. He's an incredible spot-up shooter. He can shoot it wide open. He can shoot it with a hand in his face. He can shoot it with no landing space. Great on the catch and shoot, which plays into the strengths of the Thunder. He can even create some shots off the dribble. And I think that that is a double-edged sword, right? If Jabari Smith is your number 1 shot creator and your only primary shot creator, maybe that translates poorly in the NBA. But when you have a guy like Josh Giddey to set him up, whenever you have a guy like SGA to be that ISO bucket getter, and now Jabari Smith's like your 3rd creator offensively with the ball in his hands, then that really highlights and elevates his game instead of taking away from it. He has a crazy shot to dribble as well if he needs to get it. He hits tough shots. And this is really hard to quantify, right? Because tough shots inevitably are bad shots, right? But he makes them more than he misses them. And he was forced into those crunch time scenarios at Auburn where everybody knew he was going to shoot it, and they just threw everything but the kitchen sink at him, and he still was able to knock it down, right? That gets alleviated more in the NBA whenever you have better spacing, whenever you have better players around you. But his ability to hit tough shots is a recipe for success because you'd rather be able to have that knack than not, right? And we've seen Mark Dagnall, who has not gotten to coach in the NBA playoffs, has not gotten to coach on the biggest stage, and has still impressed with his out-of-bounds plays and out-of-timeout plays that he draws up. And so you just give him another wrinkle of a guy who can rise over defenders and knock down shots to work with. And now he can draw up 3 different options in a play. And now Josh Giddey as an inbounder has 4 different options out there to really go get a bucket for him. He can either create for one guy, SGA can create for himself, and Jabari Smith can just do it all out there on an inbound type of set. So Jabari Smith's ability to shoot is the biggest factor in all of this. But also, he's a really good shot blocker. And I think that in the NBA, with NBA coaching, NBA strength and conditioning, NBA development, especially in an environment like the Thunder, that he can defend 1 through 5. Now, there are exceptions to these rules, right? Everyone wants to point to Jokic or Embiid. Who can guard those guys, right? Who can go lock down Jokic and Embiid single-handedly? In general, we're talking in general here with Jabari Smith. He can defend a point guard, a shooting guard, a small forward, a power forward in the center. And for a wing like this, that is what keeps you on the floor when you need him the most. And if you're building this whole thing with a championship in mind, as Sam Presti says that he is, and he says that the goal is not to go to the play-in, it's not to go to the playoffs, it's to win a championship one day. You need to draft players who not only can get you regular season wins, but once you're out of the regular season, can stay on the floor, be productive, and help you win a championship. And Jabari Smith can do that because of his modern skill set as a shooter and as a great defender. Also, we know how much Sam Presti loves culture and the person as well as the player. And from everything we've seen, Jabari Smith is a great person and comes from an NBA background that will help him make that business transition as smooth as possible. And another reason that Sam Presti might love him is because of his high motor. I think among the possible stars in this draft class, the possible, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 picks, right? I think of that ilk, he has the highest motor. Now, when you don't have as much talent as Jabari Smith does, or Chet Holmgren, or Paulo Banchero, to make a name for yourself, you have to have a high motor, right? But of the guys who walked into last college basketball season as surefire lottery picks, nobody played as hard, nobody rose to the occasion as much, nobody had that motor night in and night out playing in the SEC than Jabari Smith. And so I think that is very telling because, again, we've seen guys who walk into the college scene, know they're going to be a top pick and just don't care and just check out. And they're just there to bide time until they get to the NBA Combine, the NBA Lottery, the NBA Draft, and get to life in the association. But the fact that he still went out there and had that high motor gives you hope for his development as well. And sure, maybe Jabari Smith might not be a superstar face of your franchise type of player. I'd be willing to concede, in all likelihood, he won't be the number one option on your team when you win a championship. But this is a guy that you need to win a championship as a number 2 or 3. I also love his upside as a rim scorer and mid-range score to complete his game as a 3-level scorer because of his strength and ability to just overwhelmingly overpower you with his body and with his body control. I think that you saw glimpses of that at Auburn, even though his rim finishing might not have been where you wanted it to be. So those are all the positives to me about Jabari Smith. Let's talk about the weaknesses. Let's talk about his draft range. Let's talk about how he fits with the Thunder, all coming up. But first, I want to tell you right now about our friends over at Athletic Greens. Athletic Greens AG1, it is going to provide you so much in your life. It's a lifestyle-friendly option, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, gluten-free. It contains less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals, no artificial anything, while still tasting good and supporting better sleep quality, recovery speeds, mental clarity, alertness, and gut health. Athletic Greens uses the best of the best products based on the latest science with constant product iterations and third-party testings. It costs you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it's cheaper for you than your cold brew habit. It's cheaper for you than getting all the different supplements that you need yourself. It is an all-in-one nutritional insurance. Athletic Greens has 700,000 five-star reviews, 7,000 five-star reviews, recommended by pro athletes, trusted by leading health experts, including Tim Ferriss and Michael Gervins. It is incredibly important for you to take this AG1 supplement and have small micro habits and have a different habit for you in AG1 that only changes your life a small way to remember to drink this every single morning, but gives you big, big, big benefits. So make sure you go check out AG1 and get it today with our good friends over at Athletic Greens. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is giving it to you for free for 1 year, a supplement for your immune system, supporting vitamin D, and 5 travel packs for your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/LockedOnNBA Network, athleticgreens.com/NBA Network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NBA Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutrition insurance. We are back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thank you for making Locked On Thunder your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you talking Thunder basketball. Your second listen, go check out the Locked On Now podcast, a nightly recap show recapping everything from around the association, including this playoff run. So you want to check that out because I know there's a lot of games on Sunday and you probably were busy over the weekend. So you want to see what the series are at now as we head into a new week. But let's head into the weaknesses of Jabari Smith's game as we just spent 10 minutes opining for Jabari Smith. I don't necessarily trust him as a high-level ball handler at the next level. It goes back to what I was saying earlier. Can he be your only creator? Can he be your primary ball handler? No. The beautiful thing about the Thunder situation, you have an elite playmaker, an elite setup man in Josh Giddey. You have SGA, who can isolate, create for himself, and off of that comes his incredible drive and kick game, which is the best in the NBA. And that drive and kick sets up for open threes and spot up threes, something Jabari Smith excels at. And so now you're taking that pressure off him and now making him the third creator. And as an overall pick, with his skill set, as a third creator, I trust it a lot more than if I was a team that had to put him as my number 1 creator. And so I think that weakness gets minimized by the state of the Thunder. However, on a different environment, a different team, and a different roster construction, that is a weakness that I think gets maximized. I worry about his isolation bad shot habit. However, if you listen to last year's player profile and projection, you heard me the entire time explain away college basketball. It's poor spacing. A lot of the times there's only 1 or 2 NBA talents on there, and so those players feel like they have to do everything on their own. And so I don't want to condemn Jabari Smith for doing what he felt like he had to do, what he felt like was necessary to win a basketball game. I do not want to put all that on him. So I think that it's a worry, but it's something that can be easily explained away as you get to have these private workouts and pre-draft interviews with him if you're a front office executive. I do think that the jacking up shots in isolation was a product of his environment and not a product of who he is as a player. And then again, struggled at the rim. And that's no surprise for a Thunder prospect because they drafted Josh Giddey, Lou Dort, Tim Alvin, who all struggled at the rim and continue to do so their first couple of years in the NBA. However, of all the players the Thunder have invested in that had a weakness of scoring at the rim coming in, I think that Jabari Smith has the most upside in fixing that. So that's why I don't worry about that as much for this Auburn product. And that's it. That's my weakness list for Jabari Smith. That's my concern list for Jabari Smith. And that's why he's the cream of the crop for me in this draft. 17 points per game, 43% from three, 7 rebounds a game, 1 block per game. In the pick and roll, he produced a point per possession. As a spot-up shooter, he was in the 96th percentile in the country, producing 1.39 points per possession. He shot 80% the line, a consensus All-American, an All-SEC caliber player, SEC Rookie of the Year, SEC All-Freshman, had all the honors that you can imagine at Auburn, and had a really good season. And here's where this draft gets tricky. And here's where, if you listen to all of this last 16 minutes and you're thinking to yourself, well, I still like Chet better. I still like Paulo better. That's incredibly fair because this is not a draft that is a clear-cut number one. I think it's a clear-cut number 1 through 3, but not a clear-cut number 1. And you see that in the mock drafts and big boards. The Ringer has them at 2, ESPN at 3, The Athletic at 1, Bleacher Report at 2, CBS at 3, NBC at 1, DraftNet at 2, Tankathon at 2. My big board, he's number 1. So you're seeing him everywhere from 1 to 3. So no matter where you have him personally, I think it's fair, right? But for me, he's number 1 because his ceiling, tippity-top ceiling, is a Paul George second star on a title caliber team. That's his tippity-top ceiling. How often do players reach that tippity-top ceiling? You know the drill. Not very often, but it could happen. You could be a Paul George type of player. Where I like Jabari Smith is that if he crashed and burned, and we sit here and think about all the different ways that he could hit his floor, all the different potholes and all the different obstacles and all the different ways that he could fail. To me, his floor, him failing in the NBA, the lowest of low I can think of right now for Jabari Smith's game is Harrison Barnes. Now, do you want a Harrison Barnes type of player at number 1 overall? You'd probably want to do better than Harrison Barnes. But what was Harrison Barnes? What is Harrison Barnes? He's a valuable contributor on a title team in Golden State. He's a valuable contributor in the locker room. He's a valuable contributor off ball. And as a 3rd, 4th, 5th option on your team, he helps you round out a roster. He helps you complete a team that can go compete. Now, granted, those Golden State teams were immaculate. And so obviously, it's easier to be good in Golden State with Steph and Clay and Draymond than it is to be good anywhere else if you're a Harrison Barnes caliber player. But if I guarantee you a guy's floor is Harrison Barnes, I think that you sounded out of line right there because of how fluky the draft is, because of how scary the draft is. Now, obviously, injuries can happen, and they happen all the time, sadly. And things that are unheard of, right? Just unheard of things like that you don't even want to discuss can happen to where he doesn't reach his even floor. But as long as he's healthy and playing basketball, to me, his floor is Harrison Barnes, who's played over 700 career NBA games. That's good. And it was a 7th overall pick. An NBA champion and all-rookie player, as Harrison Barnes was. I feel more comfortable with that than the floor of some of these other guys. And again, this is all splitting hairs. This is all, these next few profile projections with, Jabari and Chet, and eventually Paolo Banchero and the top 3 of this draft. Everyone can have their guy and be right and not be ridiculous. There's no clear-cut number 1. But for me, it's Jabari Smith. Let's talk about how he fits with the Thunder specifically and how he will grow in this environment if the Thunder are able to land Jabari Smith and what the Thunder need to do to get Jabari Smith in this year's NBA draft besides have lottery luck. But I want to tell you right now, we're good friends over at Built Bar. Built Bar is a fantastic protein bar that tastes just like a candy bar. Go to BuiltBar.com, use the promo code LOCK15, get 15% off of your next order. Built Bar has incredible flavors like mint brownie, coconut almond. They have white chocolate cookies and cream, peanut butter, normal cookies and cream. They're all delicious, and they have new flavors all of the time at built.com. And that is my favorite part of Built Bar, because Built Bar is a great pre-workout or post-workout or as a meal replacement or a snack, and it's a healthy option for you. 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 grams of net carbs, 17 grams of protein. It's filling. It's great for you. My favorite part, though, is all their flavors, because oftentimes doing the healthy thing, making the right choice, results in repetitiveness. And you have to do the same thing every day, eat the same thing every day, eat the same flavoring every single day, and you get burnt out. But at Built Bar, you have so many options to choose from a Built Bar that's covered in 100% real chocolate to a puff option, which is like a marshmallow chocolate treat at Built Bar, and so much more. So go to built.com, use the promo code LOCK15, get 15% off your next order. Built.com, promo code LOCK15, 15% off of your next order. We are back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your teams every day. Thank you for making Locked On Thunder your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you talking Thunder basketball. For your second listen, go check out the Locked On NBA podcast. From the jump ball, the play-in tournament, through the NBA Finals. Our Locked On experts take you deeper inside the NBA playoffs than you've ever been before, with insight and breakdown affecting all 30 teams as we head into the offseason as well. That's a daily show. We're a daily show. And if you've gotten into the weeds of a playoff, as the Thunder are not in the playoffs this year, if you've gotten deep into a series, you have a Locked On podcast regarding that series. Locked On Mavs, Locked On Jazz, Locked On Hawks, Locked On Heat, Locked On everything. We have it all for you. Suns, Pelicans, Celtics, Nets. We have it all. Go check them out wherever you get your podcast from. Subscribe to Locked On Thunder. Wherever you get your podcast from, leave a like, a comment, subscribe on YouTube as well. We're daily, even in the off season, because there is no off season. There's just a part of the season in the year where we don't play games in the NBA. So make sure you check us out. Follow me on Twitter at Riley_Styles, and email us at thunderpod@gmail.com. Let's get into how Jabari Smith fits with the Thunder. This is, I think, the most important part, obviously, of any of this. And to me, you put Jabari Smith off ball, and he is the best fit with the Thunder, the most seamless fit, let's say. Because again, you can have Paolo or Chet as your number one. In my opinion, though, the only thing I'll ever disagree with is that I don't see those two, even though I see them as very good players, and I see them in the top three, and I would be dancing in the streets if the Thunder got any of these three guys. I think any of these three guys puts the Thunder on a better trajectory than they are right now in this rebuild. That's how talented the top three are. But the only pushback I give to the other two is that I think that this transition, this meshing of talent is seamless with Jabari Smith, and takes some work with Paolo and Chet. Because you can put Jabari off ball and let him work and be incredible. With Josh Giddey's elite creation, again, SGA is the best driving kick player in the game. He's a day one starter, and he can hit tough buckets. And off of that, he can go create for himself. And off of creating for yourself, you create for others. And Jabari Smith will go from the top attention, the game plan headline, to SGA is the game plan headline, to defenses are worried about how to contain Josh Giddey now because of how much of a playmaker he is on the rebounding boards, on the passing ability and getting assists, racking up his teammates, getting his teammates involved, and also scoring with that floater in the lane. And if he comes back with a better jump shot, right, you're moving Jabari Smith, this ultimate talent, this top overall pick or second or third pick, however low you want to put him. You can't go lower than 3, right? Now you're moving him. It's like the third or fourth most scouted option on the Thunder. Third, of course. I think that all helps Jabari Smith. I think that every player gets a boost from the Thunder's environment. And so of these bad teams, of these lottery teams who are going to get these high-end players, you don't really trust anyone more than the Thunder in the top 10, top 5 of this draft in terms of an organization developing talent. Again, rotational fit, a day one starter that fits seamlessly next to Josh Giddey and SGA. And I think that that's a big deal because we're so worried about SGA's fit with Josh Giddey, and they had that meeting before the Suns game and then had their best game together, but then couldn't play again together for the rest of the year because of Josh Giddey's injury, right? As we're still working out the kinks of those two, do you really want to throw in a third wrinkle? Or do you want to throw in a guy in Jabari Smith who can just let it ride, who can just fit his role, understand his role, and stand over there and let these two figure out their positioning. While he still isn't just outcast, isn't just kind of isn't just outcasted or pushed to the side or whatever, alienated. He's still going to get his because he can play so well off these two guys. I think it's a brilliant fit. Now, how does it impact the roster? Look, this is going to be a conversation the entire series, so just buckle up. Because if the Thunder are truly comfortable in taking in all four first round, all four picks in the top 35, 3 first round picks, 1 at 34, if they're very comfortable doing that, as Sam Presti said that they are, Sam Presti said that they're going to, then at the end of training camp, at the end of the preseason, they have to make uncomfortable and hard decisions. And so, how would Jabari Smith specifically impact that? Number one, you got to look at Isaiah Roby. You just do. You have Jabari Smith now fitting this kind of wing/4 role. You have Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, who I've said since the draft night of Jeremiah Robinson-Earl last year, makes Isaiah Roby redundant. And you need a roster spot. You look at Darius Baisley, who's going into a contract year, and we know how Sam Presti feels about getting guys in that contract year, as a lame duck year, so to say. Will he even have the opportunity to prove himself after this offseason of work if you're focusing on Jabari Smith's development and you're starting him from day one? That I think those are the two players I think that should be put on notice if the Thunder draft Jabari Smith. Because again, this is going to have a ripple effect no matter who the Thunder draft, because you just have to make up 4 roster spots. But those are the two I'd say get put most on Main Street in all of this. Why the Thunder should take Jabari Smith. Now, these questions will get more interesting as why the Thunder should or shouldn't take a player as we get deeper and deeper in the class. But for Jabari Smith, it's simple. The reason you take him is because he's nearly a seamless fit for this rebuild, and it allows you to work out with Josh Giddey and SGA without throwing in a third wrinkle. If you draft a Jaden Ivey type, again, you wouldn't do that to pick one, but again, if you just get a Jaden Ivey type of player, now not only do SGA and Josh Giddey have to find a way to fit together as 2 point guards, now you've got a third guard in the wing, third guard in the realm of things that now has to work off of these other 2 dominant, ball handlers and playmakers and leaders of that guard position group. With Jabari Smith, it's very seamless. Why the Thunder shouldn't take him? For Chet and Paulo and Jabari, this question will be the exact same, because they simply like somebody better, right? This is not as it was last year, where no matter what team got the first overall pick, they're taking Cade Cunningham. Doesn't matter if it's the Thunder, the Pistons, the Rockets, the Cavs, the whomevers. They're taking Cade Cunningham. With this, you're just simply guessing. Who does each franchise value the most? And that's where we end things off with, how do you get Jabari Smith? You got to have a top 3 pick. And if you don't, trading up in this year's draft will be very, very, very interesting. Because last year, if your number 1 guy was Cade Cunningham, you had to get to number 1. And the Pistons knew that, and they could bend you over the barrel and trade the 50 states, right? They could do whatever they wanted to you. This year, though, let's say the Pistons get the top overall pick, and let's say Troy Weaver's guy is Paolo Banchero at number 1. If he has to keep the pick, he's taking Paolo Banchero. Let's say Sam Presti's board, though, is Jabari Smith. Well, now the Pistons don't have as much leverage, because they can just go number 2 and say, hey, look, he's going to take Paolo. He's going to take Paolo. We want Jabari. Let's get a deal done here at 2. It just creates more leverage for everybody involved. Same thing can be said for the Thunder get number 1, right? And they want to trade back because they think that the guy trading up for them and swapping picks with them will take whomever and leave them their guy at whatever pick that they go down to, right? Trading up in this draft is much more obtainable to me than it was last year, because there's a scenario where the lottery shakes out and you have 4, and the top overall team doesn't want Jabari Smith. Second overall team doesn't want Jabari Smith. Now you're trying to move up 1 spot, or trying to leapfrog number 3 to number 2. That's a lot easier than going from 6 to 1 for Cade Cunningham, or 6 to 2, or 6 to 3, right? It's a lot easier if you can get to that 4 slot or 5 slot and then move up to 3 or 2 and still get the guy that you want. It just comes down to how do these executives value each individual player, because there is no clear-cut option. It throws a big wrench into things, and it will make draft night exhilarating. And I cannot wait. And we're going to continue breaking down these prospects all throughout the offseason. Tomorrow, we're joined by Richard Stamen to do the same exercise, only with Chet Holmgren, because I know a lot of you have Poku PTSD and need to hear from an in in-depth perspective from two different perspectives on Chet Holmgren to see how you should shake out on the Chet Holmgren saga. We'll do that tomorrow on Locked On Thunder. Subscribe for free across all platforms so you never miss an episode. And until tomorrow, be good and be good to one another.